What does it mean to plant your flag? It means you're not afraid.
It means you're passionate about what you do.
It means you're here to serve others.
In business, in life.
In good and bad.
You aren't afraid to fly your colors proudly because you know
you serve a greater purpose. This is the Plant Your Flag podcast with Mike Bean and Jeremy Mountain.
Hello, folks, and welcome back. It's the 5th episode of the Plant Your Flag podcast, where we like to meet people around Western New York and sort of tell a little bit more of the story behind their brand, their company. And we've got a new guest today, Tony Luckoski from Advanced.
It's right there on my shirt.
Advanced Sewer and Drain Cleaning.
There you go.
Got her. You know how many times I've written that, and I don't know how I didn't get that right.
All those Instagram posts you guys do.
Yeah, Advanced Sewer and Drain Cleaning. And that is right at 1345 Military Road in Tonawanda.
Yep.
So right in our backyard here at Bean Media. And as he knows, he's sort of been brought up to speed on the Plant Your Flag show and what we're trying to do here. And we'll open it up as we try to each time. And that is, what or who inspired you, Tony, to plant your flag?
Golly. It's a couple people. My dad was definitely an influence, as being the previous owner of the company. I always came home from school and got to hear about how good and or interesting running a company of your own is, right? Never having to, work in necessarily a corporate entity. It was kind of an interesting experience growing up in that. But then also my uncle in Xenia, Ohio, was a successful owner of a auto salvage yard, and seeing the fruits that he produced out of that, both family wise and monetarily wise, it was really intriguing to be my own business owner of some sort. It just never had I was so busy running the rest of my life that I never stopped and thought about running my own company. I always had that dream. I just never applied the strategy to start anything, to start developing a business model or a business plan or whatever, and get licensing and copyrights or whatever else you needed to get a business going.
Right. Just
never.
So you sort of got an early backstage pass, essentially.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
When you were growing up, what around what age do you feel you recognized that your dad's job wasn't the same as some of your other friends' dad's jobs that may have been an employee versus an employer?
I guess it's twofold. When I was younger, we would always take vacations. We were able to use that leverage of basically designing when you're off around Christmas time, 4th of July, fill in the blank. We could utilize that leverage to do family things, to go camping, to do special weekend events, stuff like that. It was, I knew that from a young age, because you growing up in it, you don't know any different.
Right.
The other part of it, which slips my mind now. Yeah.
Just sort of noticing we, like you said, we get to go on vacation, whereas some of the other kids may have been sort of forced into their parents may have had to work, or, at what point did you sort of recognize wait, I guess I don't need to have a boss if I am the boss, type of thing?
Yeah, it wasn't probably until after I started working for my dad, when I worked for my dad for 12 years before I started running the operation.
And did you work for anyone before your dad?
I worked for a few auto repair facilities and dealerships.
Was it challenging to sort of, because I know if I were to work for my dad, it would not exactly be the easiest, because he would probably be, stricter on me than anyone else. Was it challenging to go from not working for him to sort of working directly for him and in the family business?
we always had that buddy relationship.
Yeah.
But the difference with other companies versus a home service company, if you will, you're not in the same building.
Right.
Like, you're not stuffed in a cubicle or an office together where,
right.
you know, like, my son, the accountant, is my new employee.
Yeah. You're not rubbing elbows at the urinal.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. That's a funny one. Just brought up a memory of a family trip that I don't know how rated are we here.
Yeah, we could always edit it out if it gets too raunchy.
It was funny. We were on our way back from visiting family in Dayton, Ohio, which is where we're originally from, and we're standing at two urinals together I think it was in a PA rest stop on the 90, and he leans over and he whispers to me, he says, "You got to be careful." And I'm like, "Why?" You know, I'm like 8, and I'm like, "Why, Dad? Why do I got to be careful in here?" He's like, "You got to be careful. Dick hangs out in here." And it was just like, that's like my all-time favorite joke that my dad's ever told. It's just I use it all the time. It's fun. It's not. Yeah. It's not that offensive. It's true. It's like, but.
Yeah.
I feel like if your name's Richard, I guess it might hurt a little bit, but it's still funny.
I feel like rest stops bring out a specific persona or place in the human mind where it's just like it's equally safe but also terrifying. And like
how many horror movies have been written about rest stops, right?
Exactly. But so, you were mentioning the difference between like sort of working within one arena versus like many arenas.
Yeah, right.
And is that something that made you immediately sort of like the industry? Because it doesn't seem like it would be an industry for everyone.
So I always wanted to work on cars when I was younger. I mean, it was Legoland and Matchbox cars and model railroads and slot car tracks and sand castles and just working with your hands and building things. And then I did the Auto BOCES program in high school.
I've heard a lot of good things about that.
Dude,
I never heard one kid that did that didn't benefit from it.
No. I mean, it's an invaluable skill, even if you just walk away with learning how to change your brakes or rotate your tires. The amount of savings you can get from just doing some of your simple owned stuff on your own car is incredible. But then I went to ECC for their automotive program and then worked for a local dealership for a while. And that led to another position at a different shop, which I was standing there one day and my dad called me and he said, "Hey, we need another technician. I'll match your pay plus $1.50 if you want to come over." And the rest was history. I mean, it was just, rode along with another plumber for a year. A lot of the concepts transferred over because it's all a diagnosis theory.
Mm-hmm.
If A is happening, then you solve it with B, or even taking stuff apart and put it back together. I mean, it's really intriguing how many skills that I learned on rusty cars apply to plumbing.
Yeah,
it's there's been many times where I've walked into a house and saved a customer's antique bathtub faucet because I know how to manipulate metal a little bit.
Right.
It's just wild.
Some of the more like creative side of it that people may not think of when they're just like, I got to call a plumber. I got something that's not working. But like there is a certain like creative element is based on what you're telling me that like there's a creative solution or there's a easy solution.
Yeah.
And I'm sure like a lot of plumbers may just take the easy and or financially beneficial solution.
Well, for an example, I had a customer that had a single handle shower faucet, and some of them are notoriously difficult to get apart. And I think I was the third plumber that showed up to try to get this thing apart, and everybody else was like, "Replace it.
I'm good. Yeah.
Here's $1,200. Replace it." Right.
Yeah.
And I walked in and I'm like, "Let me try something." And I went out to the van and I, dipped into my magical freaking Mary Poppins bag of tools that I got in the back of the van and came back into the house and swore at it a few times and turned this, turned that, drilled this out, added some of this and got the cartridge out, and $100, $200, I was out the door. I mean, the customer still calls me. I was just there last week for something else, just building that customer reputation with them. But not all the cases happen that way. Some do go the replacement route depending on what you actually find when you get it apart. But I really, really enjoy being the guy that shows up when the other guy couldn't do it, and I get it done. And it makes me smile so much inside.
I was just going to say, that seems like that would be extremely fulfilling. And is that sort of how Advanced has always approached, helping people? Is that sort of always been a part of the brand, so to speak, before your time?
Yeah, and there are so many people that recommend us that are in all the industries around Western New York. We got customers that are local police officers, local DPW people, and we work on their own personal equipment, or their own personal house rather. We go and we visit them at their house, we fix their stuff, and they trust us to do it. A lot of really small local business owners use us because they know that we're there. We'll get the job done. But yeah, by far one of the best feelings is helping the customer the right way the first time. And the extra cherry on top is when you find out that you're the third guy that's been there.
Right. And all the others,
and everybody else
quitters.
Gave up. Or, told them that, you got to, that was one of our claims to fame, or still is, that we'd go to a house and put a little bit more effort into cleaning the sewer and get through the blockage and get it open.
Versus needing to just come back in a couple of months.
Versus digging it up.
Right.
For 10 to 15 grand or whatever.
Like the yard, basically.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Making a giant monster truck course in your yard. I mean, it's like, it's crazy. Or there's been a couple times where other companies have gotten cables stuck in their sewer and they can't get them out. And they immediately we got to dig the sewer. And I'm like, well, let me go give it a shot. I'll go put some holy water and magic cape on and, see if we can get it out. And if we can, great. Got a customer for life. If you can't, then, or there'll be times where I'll walk and be like, look, let's make a bet. If I get the sewer open, you pay me. If you don't, give me, $50 or whatever, just to cover my time.
Right.
And it's a fun challenge. Make it interesting, spice it up a little bit. It's different.
Yeah. And that it seems like that sort of experience with a homeowner or business owner would be not only, like you said, somewhat entertaining, because might as well make it fun while we're going to get our hands dirty here, but also like that customer relationship, or the difference that would make in being memorable, I would feel would, whether you get it done or not, that effort that would be there would be memorable. Well, it wouldn't be like, what was that company again?
Yeah.
It would be like, no, that was, you remember.
Right. Yeah.
I feel like that would have to be beneficial to just retaining and growing your customer base, because one person tells another person tells another person.
Yeah.
And a funny story becomes, like you said already, a client for life. I think that's clear. What do you feel like, sort of, you mentioned before how, you had gone from the auto industry, father asked you to join the team, fast forward, you're in control. And how do you feel you as an individual and as a leader, who were you when you first started for that first year? And, now that you are sort of the leader of the company running the show, how do you feel you've changed, both like internally and or externally?
Oh man. Emotionally, emotionally, I'm a completely different person.
How so?
Well, the whole reason that I am the operator of Advanced Sewer and Drain Cleaning is because we lost my father to COVID.
And I'm aware of that, but obviously the viewers are not.
Right. And obviously that was very abrupt for a lot of families in Western New York and around the world. But it was really wild. We got a call on a Wednesday. It said Dad was sick. He didn't feel well. and this was April 2020.
Yeah, this was,
so it was like
right
real
in the
early.
beginning.
Yeah, it was like they shut everything down.
We didn't
like
even know what was going on yet, practically.
Yeah.
If we ever did.
Right. He started feeling sick on Wednesday, and Thursday it got worse. Friday he was good. Saturday morning he was fine. By noon on Saturday he couldn't breathe, and by Saturday afternoon my mom dropped him off at the hospital and watched him walk in, and that was the last time anybody from our family saw him. Because you weren't allowed to go in anywhere.
Right. It was quarantine.
Put yourself in a bubble and see you later. And
so you had to grow up pretty quick.
Dude, it was like learning how to swim in a tsunami. It was gross. It was messed up. And it thankfully my dad had been taking, my parents had gone to on some pretty long trips together.
Sabbatical almost.
Yeah, month or so.
Yeah.
They spent in Florida with my grandmother, and they went to Hawaii for their honeymoon for their wedding anniversary for a month.
Nice.
And so
you had been sort of baptized a little bit to him not being around.
I knew enough to be dangerous.
Yeah.
I knew enough that I knew that these bills got paid this time. And
right.
These are the contacts for the insurance companies, and these are the contacts for this and that.
But you still had the break glass in case of emergency where you could pick up and phone him. Whereas then you don't really be prepared.
Where now it's like, talking to an urn is tough. It doesn't work.
Right.
Believe me, I've tried. Tears running down my face, just sitting there staring at a pot, like, come back. But yeah, it was a baptism by fire for sure.
And how do you feel like emotionally you've either, grown or shifted your mindset? Has it made you sort of stronger? Has it made you sort of more empathetic? How has it affected you as like sort of a leader?
Well, there's I've always been a compassionate person and very passionate as well. But I think it's the biggest growth that I saw emotionally was probably the speed at which I react to things. Like I was always a very emotionally driven decision maker, and I can still be, but I can, let's let that pot simmer for a minute and see what happens. Step back and look. And I noticed that a lot with my dad's personality as well, where he was very quiet all the time. He was that strong, quiet type. Like he would never raise his voice, never yell at you. Unless you really stepped in it, then he'd be all over you. But always really like a Dirty Harry kind of attitude, where he's just sitting there, just quiet, just, But then you stepped on his lawn and all hell broke loose. It was.
He sounds like a real cowboy type.
Yeah, he was a great guy. I mean, not just from a father perspective, but from a friend.
Yeah,
just a community member. I mean, I can't remember how many people were at that funeral. That we had the funeral at Knox Church, but there were people. The entire building was full, and then the entire atrium was full of people.
And that's a testament, obviously, to
it seats like 350 people.
Yeah,
and yeah, it was wild to see the community rally around that and show support for my father.
So him being someone that now did he start Advanced Sewer?
No. So some of our listeners may remember growing up in Kenmore, where Mangpool is, but on Elmwood, right in the village, across from the DPW building, is it was a Nestle Toll House yellow hardware store, Hilberger Hardware, and then in 1955, Jim and John Hilberger started the hardware store and the plumbing company, and they used to advertise that they do the plumbing right out of the station wagon. Right, so like they'd use the station wagon all week for plumbing stuff, and then empty it out and flip the seats back up and take everybody to church in the morning on Sunday. And so
that's awesome. That's like a movie right there.
It could be probably little gross too, but depending on what you did that week. But yeah, so in '87, my father was a machinist with his father in Franklin, Ohio, just south of Dayton, and that's where we were living at the time. And coincidentally, my father had just lost his father prior to that, and an opportunity came up for the purchase of a hardware store and a plumbing company. And my father and my mother's uncle went in on it and bought the hardware store, the plumbing company, in the building, and bought the whole lot of it. And the hardware store unfortunately didn't make it. I think it was mostly because of some of the big box stores that moved in the early 90s kind of flatlined it.
That as an industry has unfortunately sort of fallen on the wayside.
But it was a little run-of-the-mill village hardware store. You could go in there and get advice. You could get everything from soup to nuts and lawnmowers and snowblowers, and you get them fixed there. And they did glass and even had the train going around the ceiling. It was pretty neat.
Yeah,
growing up in that little store for the 5 or 6 years that my dad had it, it was kind of really, really cool.
Yeah.
So,
would you say, in a perfect world, would you have become a business owner? Did you think that was something that was always sort of in you from seeing it from a young age? Or do you feel like it wasn't necessarily something that you forecasted as you were kind of growing up?
Growing up, I never really thought about it.
Yeah.
I just, if I want to work on cars, you work here. If you want to do that, you work here. If you want to bag groceries, you work at Wegmans. It's just like, that's kind of my mentality of growing up. It never really crossed my mind to be a business owner.
Yeah, and until I met Mike when I first started here at Bean Media, I didn't really necessarily think it was something that was even like realistic.
Right.
And it was like when I first walked in to the old office, I had said to Mike, like, oh man, this is like what I would have if I did it myself for like 10, 15 years. And it's always been like a big passion that I have. Obviously, that's part of the reason why we started this podcast too, was just like knowing, like you had said earlier, like not working necessarily for a corporation, not working necessarily for, the man, so to speak, but also like I do see a lot of or I have seen over going on 10 years now, like that it's not easy and that it's not for everyone. So, what would you say would be some of the qualities that you feel if someone out there is already running their business or considering starting their own business, whatever industry, what sort of qualities or characteristics do you feel are, kind of mandatory or got to have it? You're going to have to be this.
Well, first of all, I think if you want to run your own business, whether you have the skill set to do the physical craft of the business, the hardcore, like media production or plumbing or the mechanical ability, you have to have an idea that you can flesh out. You have to have that dream. I mean, I run into so many people now that don't dream.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to, it would be so cool if we did this. There's a lot of people out there that don't have that forward thinking momentum. They're more in the moment thinkers. And I think, in order to run your own business, you need to be able to have the ideas that, I have this set of tools at my disposal. What can these tools do?
Mm-hmm.
Not just like, I know it's not a good practice to use a wrench as a hammer, but
right.
If you had to use a wrench as a hammer, use a wrench as a hammer.
Right.
Right? Like I don't know, I guess it's kind of hard to describe, but I hope people, kind of understand what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
But just having the idea of what you want to do, what your 5-year, your 10-year, your 15-year goal is. Where do you want to see yourself or your company or the people that are working for you? Like I know right now in my mind, I know in 15 years, if all the people in my company that are with me now, I already have a predetermined slot where I think they would fit best in 15 years.
Right.
Like, let's say we blow up and we become this huge plumbing company, which I don't know if I would want to go that way. But if we do, or if we branch off into a different industry, like, I know where the skill sets of the people that I have in my pocket would be useful in those different situations.
And as far as like that goes, I think like dreaming or visualizing that future, it would become imperative then to, you know, surround yourself with people that can also see that vision or also want to be a part of that vision. Right. And I think that's a challenge, and that society today doesn't necessarily feel as though it is doable or realistic, and there is so much competition and it is fierce. But I think like obviously a big part of any company being successful is the team, the lifeblood, whatever you want to call it. So, you know, what types of individuals or characteristics do you seek out when creating your team at Advanced?
Yeah, I definitely want somebody that can communicate. You need to have somebody that can, well, let's back up. You want to have someone that's not afraid to communicate. A lot of people are afraid to submit to the idea that they don't know everything.
Mm-hmm.
Or like my guys will call me 3, 4, 5 times a day, which is, you know, maybe some people think that that's annoying, but I look at it as, you know, they're gleaning wisdom. They're looking for a different way to do something, or they're just, you know, solidifying their ideas of diagnosis or procedure or however they want to do it. And then, so submitting to your fear of not knowing.
Right.
Is one of the big ones. Customer relations, obviously. We're in people's homes. I mean, you got to have the respect for the other person's property. I always tell my guys, I'd be like, pretend it's your grandma's house,
mm-hmm.
and you're working around her fine china.
Right.
Like, you break it, dude. You bought it. There's been a handful of times where I've made my employees pay for shower curtains or carpets or, you know, soap dishes or, you know.
Right.
It's, you know, it happens.
That would be the opposite of that. What we were referring to earlier, that memorable. What was that company? It was that damn Advanced broke our shower curtain.
Yeah, right. We had a guy that got the cable. I don't know even how he did it, because I feel it's impossible. But somehow he got the shower curtain caught in the cable, and it ripped the whole shower rod off the wall. And, you know, I told the lady, email us a picture, and I went over to Home Depot or whatever, and I got the shower curtain, and I got a new shower rod, and
did you put it in for him?
Went over there at 7:30 at night, put it in for him.
I might have to have you put one in for me. I accidentally ripped one out.
Or plumbing operation.
Well, I almost called you for a temporary apartment that I had just gotten into that unfortunately had many things go wrong. But eventually I just told the guy we got to move, because we'll talk about that later. But it had some serious issues going on.
Interesting.
It was an 1860 house.
That's cool.
And he clearly was a DIYer.
Mm-hmm.
But needless to say, I'm fortunate to have gotten out of there and into a new apartment rather than... It would have been good for you, because I feel like it would have been good business, but I don't know if he ever would have called you because he was a DIYer.
Right.
That being said...
It's a Mr. Good Enough.
Yes, exactly. And it wasn't good enough. But what would you say to, you know, people out there? Because YouTube has a lot of videos. As much as I love to see the fact that there's a lot of footage out there to help people do things themselves, what's your opinion on sort of how the internet has made people feel as though they can be a plumber and they can fix something? Does that, you know, what are you seeing in the field when it comes to some of that stuff?
So everybody's an overnight professional now with YouTube, like you were saying, and
they're probably telling you how to do something.
Yeah, there's been times, and I'll be like, okay, well, my wife got me one of those shirts that says, you know, call me, I'll fix it. It's this price.
Yeah.
Stand there and watch me. It's $25 more. If you tell me how to do my job, it's like 3 times more. It's like it's a fun shirt. I'll wear it to some places and people look at it really quizzically and like, what does that mean? I'm like, well, you tell me how to do my job when I'm telling you, or when you called me to do it, then just,
Yeah, exactly.
Back to the topic though, but I mean, plumbing in general for me isn't difficult. Like rebuilding a toilet. If you have any mechanical ability in your body, you most likely can rebuild a toilet. The problem arises is when you go to rebuild the toilet and something goes wrong. I'm going to use my sister-in-law's house, for example, in Kenmore, built in the 20s, duplex, up, down, double. And she had, I think it was I had to rebuild the toilet. So I was putting all the new parts inside the back of the toilet. Everything was going great. I'm on the road to get, it was like the last stop of the day. So it was like 4:20, 4:10, somewhere around that range. And I'm like, I'll throw this toilet together, button it up, test it, make sure it works, and I'll be out of here. Well, I got the toilet back together, went to go put the supply line on, and just literally set the supply line on the supply stop, the valve coming out of the wall, and the valve went doop and turned upside down, and you just hear this inside the wall. So what happened was when I touched it, the pipe broke in the wall, and there was water coming at full pressure through a 1/2-inch line, just blasting inside the wall of this 1928, house. Now, thankfully, when my wife and I got married, we lived in this apartment. So to get to the basement is an interesting topic because there's like 3 locks on the back door to the back stairs. And it's like one up here, one down here, one here. You got to hold all 3 of them at the same time. So you got to like use an elbow and a hand and another hand up here. I don't think I've ever run so fast in my life. And it was just like boom downstairs. And I literally dove over totes. It's like storage totes in the basement to where the water meter is and shut it off while I was like dangling upside down off of this bins.
Yeah. Spider-Man.
As I'm looking over my shoulder, I'm just watching water rain down through the ceiling from the 2nd floor into the basement. Thankfully, it maintained itself in the enclosure between the walls, and it didn't get into like the dining room or the base or the 1st floor bathroom or anything like that. But it was like, well, there goes my evening.
Yeah.
Because now you got to cut the wall open. You got to fix the pipe.
Yeah.
And come to think about it, I don't think she had me go back and put it back together. She was supposed to call me and set up an appointment to go put drywall back up.
Yeah.
My sister. It's not something that I would, normally do for my customers, but as sister-in-law, you got to help out the family a little bit. But.
Yeah. Now, what was that as a result of someone doing something in the past not the right way? Or was it just old?
Strictly old pipe. I mean, the house was built in 1928. I mean, it's like, what, just shy of 100 years old.
Right. So that would have probably happened to anyone that went to go do that job.
If I was 100 years old, I'd probably leak too.
Well, that's scary. I'm going to have to ask you something about my new apartment when we get off here. But as we get closer to the end here, I want to talk a little bit about Advanced and just what you feel Western New York needs to know about advanced sewer and drain cleaning. How do you separate yourself from some of the other companies? What do you feel makes you the person to call versus some of the local competitors? Because there's obviously a lot of people someone can call, but why would you say someone should call your company?
And we're in the community. We live, work, and play here. I know a lot of the other plumbers do, but we're the company that's gonna stick with you, and see the project through. We're not gonna flake out. We're not gonna just sell you a line of whatever because we want to make the money. I mean, that was the one big thing that my father always taught me. and that stuck with me, is it's not always about the money. Sometimes it's about the relationship. You know, I mean, yeah, sure, I could be the plumber that collects cars or, you know, drives a 911 or a McLaren or, you know, fill in the blank. But that's not who I want to be. I want to be the guy that is recognized in the community as a good plumber, as a good businessman, as a quality member of society. You know, it's weird to me when somebody, like, my wife and I had this running joke where wherever we go on a trip, like we'll be in Florida, we'll be at Disney, right? And one of my customers will come up to me and say, "Hey, you were at my house 3 weeks ago." You know, and it's like, holy cow, Mrs. Jones, how are you? And it's like, and it's hilarious because, I mean, we honeymooned in Greece and we even rented people there we knew.
That's crazy.
Just because of the reach into the community that we have. And I feel that that's important to have the trust for that, from that aspect, that you get to, you know, you get to have that relationship. It's like the step below being a friend.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, definitely.
It's a weird feeling.
It's somewhere between friend, family, colleague, but I think trust is the most important factor, and that I feel like once you have someone you trust in something as potentially serious as plumbing, where it's something that until something goes wrong, nobody thinks about, but then once something does go wrong, if you don't have someone you trust, it could obviously be a lot more expensive. Well, thank you, Tony. I really appreciate it. I think one thing that I want to kind of leave on is two things, actually. One, if there's something you want to leave us with that may have been extremely strange, or maybe just something that comes to mind that was extremely weird that's happened to you over your course of your years as a plumber. And then lastly, just sort of what's next for Advanced. Those are just two of the last things I wanted to kind of.
All right. So I guess we'll go in order.
Sure.
Golly, the weird one, I must have been 5 years into the gig, and was down in the city in a double, and the toilet was blocked, and there was a young man that was living there that was just kind of hanging out, wanted to help, and I'm all with the kids. I'm all for the kids, rather. It's the next generation, right? You just showing them one thing could change their entire life.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I would always, here's a pair of gloves, here's a flashlight, stand here and just point the flashlight, stuff that Dad would do, right? And then we also made up all these little stickers. Like you can go to the doctor, you get a sticker when you're a kid, right?
Yeah.
So I made up these stickers that said, "Thanks for being a great junior plumber."
Nice.
With our phone number on the bottom of them and the logo of the company. And I've actually had customers call me and be like, "My kid lost a sticker." I'm like, "Well, that's going to cost you a service call." But no, back to the story. So we're working on this toilet, and I'm augering the toilet, and I can't get the toilet auger to go through. And I just jokingly look at the kid, and I say, "What did you put in here, dude? What's in this? What'd you put in the toilet?" And he like sheepishly turns and points at the door where the doorknob was. The doorknob was in the toilet. I had to take the toilet off the floor, take it outside to the yard, turn the toilet over, and sure as all hell, turn the toilet over, ka-boonk, and the doorknob fell out of the toilet. It was one of those heavy glass ones too, like from the old houses.
Yeah.
It was really funny. And he's just like, I'm like, "We'll keep this secret. This is our secret, buddy. We're not going to tell anybody."
Yeah. That's amazing.
Don't want Mom or Dad to take it out on him.
It's fair to say that he probably remembers that story.
Yeah, I hope he does. That was a fun one. As far as what's next, golly, man, I'd love to grow. I'd love to see 2 or 3 other trucks on the road with me. Right now we got 4. I'd love to see that next step up into the helping the community portion. I see it. It's a highway that goes both directions. Like, I'm helping the community, but I'm also helping my employees. Like, 'cause I really try to promote a really, really healthy working relationship within the team. we do a big company Christmas party every year, and we'll do little special events and paintball or whatever, and we'll just hang out and do outside of work things, team building, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
Just to keep that community going. But yeah, I'd like to see, a total of 6 to 7 trucks on the road. Get those calls rolling in so that we can make that happen. It's neat to think about.
All right. So we talked a little bit about what's next, and if you want to just tell us a little bit more about some of the people that work for you and how they have made Advanced what it is and what it can be in the future.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I love propping up my guys. That's great. We'll start with the dispatch team, I guess. We have Nate and Kate, and they're great. No, they're wonderful, wonderful team. Nate does 4 days a week. Kate's in there for 2, so that we cover all the Monday through Saturday stuff. But they are amazing on the phones. They can communicate very, very well. Nate was in the field for 2 years before he decided, before the need arose that we needed a dispatcher, and he stepped right in and filled that seat to overwhelming capacity. Kate is that sweet Southern belle that every company needs to have on the end of the phone. She can calm a raging bull and do, a sweet little lamb. She's amazing at that craft. And they totally grasp the dispatching aspect of it, organizing the team and getting them where they need to go. And then our 2 main service guys that we have with us right now is Sean and Brandon. Sean's been with us about 5 years. I've seen him grow so much. He's like right on the verge of being able to get his journeyman's licenses, which is really, really exciting. And then Brandon, we found Brandon through the BOCES program. He did an after-school BOCES program in the evenings for plumbing, and during the internship, he called us. We have a couple other connections through the community that know him, and they recommended him, and he's been nothing but, it's like wearing a hey dude with him. He's the most comfortable employee to have in the world. It's great. He listens well. He asks the right questions. He's great with the customers. Yeah, he put the charm on the old ladies like nobody can. So it's really good.
Do you find that stuff fulfilling to see, like you mentioned, seeing some of the growth in as like a professional, but also as a technician?
Yeah. Yeah, it's to watch your employees grow in the skill sets that they have. It's almost like watching your kids grow up.
Right.
It's very similar. It's like watching them, walk, run.
Yeah. Ride
solid foods, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
hey, you used the toilet today. Good job.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's really satisfying to see your employees grow, and know that you had a part in influencing that part of their life, and hearing about their families and their how working in Advanced Sewer makes their family home life that much better.
Yeah.
Like Brandon is part of the lacrosse community, and they just had a really, really banner standing in I think it was the national lacrosse tournament that they just had in Syracuse. And I think he said there was like 50 some teams that played, and I think they were, the higher end of the mid pack, which for national, I call that a win.
For sure.
But yeah, I really enjoy supporting the passions of the passions of my employees, watching them grow. I know Kate does dog shows, and she's got horses right now. Bellini, her boxer, that she shows is at the office now with her while they're dispatching.
So it's almost like kind of slivering off a little bit of that freedom that we talked about in the beginning, and sort of sharing that as and that's what something I've seen is working for a small business is like, yes, there is some of the challenges, but also that's you can't really put a price on some of those freedoms that you ultimately do deliver to yourself if you do a good job.
Yeah, as long as the employee understands that they're an employee and they have a job to do, I'll give them a little rope.
Yeah.
But you still do need to have that wherewithal as a business owner that if they start taking the rope, you got to cut the chain, or at least yank on it, and get them to slow down and be like, hey, dude, that was a little far.
Right. Which can be challenging too, I'm sure.
There's a very fine line between being a good boss and being a friend.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times the employee will shift that work employee relationship to a friend relationship, and then it doesn't normally end well.
Yeah, it's tough to come back from.
Yeah,
I could see that.
It's because you want to be able to counsel your employees both in the field and then emotionally, but you don't necessarily need to know everything.
Right. Yeah. And that makes a lot of sense. Well, thank you, Tony. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Awesome.
I'm sure we'll talk again. I've got to ask you something about my apartment when we get off here.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Tony.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate the Bean Media team being here. You guys have been helping me. It's been 8 months now.
Yeah, almost going on a year, I feel
going on a year that you guys have been doing your media craft.
Trying
Instagram
to do whatever
and Facebook, and now you're doodling on my website and making that perfect. And
trying to do what we can. Make you a little more digital and sort of transfer what we're talking about here into a digital format so that people around Western New York can obviously get to know you a little better and find you when they need to, and then also know that you're the one to call when they need you.
Right. And then we got some excellent ideas in the tube. We'll see what happens this fall.
Definitely.
Maybe get some fun commercials going on.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Tony, and thank you guys. And stay tuned because we'll be planting the flag on the next episode. We'll see you. Audio is recording.
Here we go. It's like being at the top of a roller coaster. This is going to be fun.
All right.
We're supposed to be synced with that. It doesn't matter. Post-production. Here we go. Do one more for the camera.
What?
No, one more sip of water. You took like 4 sips of water, set it down.
It's coffee. I'm trying to get my pregame energy in.
You got to get your mouth lubricated.
Yeah. I sound nasally now because I'm all dry up there.
Do the nasal breathing exercises.
How we sounding over there, Mike?
Good. I'm just...
Multiple Mike Beans. Yeah, it's definitely crazy.
All right. What about plumbing?